even though it's not as significant. Control Z will take care of that. The shape of the yield curve tells you stories. At a minimum, it says over the next 4 years or so, you expect the short-term rates to go down. Because currently the 3-month rate is, if I 542, and 5-year rate is 3.8. Okay, why would market allow that? Unless you believe that short-term rates are going to be lower in the future, you're willing to get a lower rate for the entire 5 years. On the other hand, the 10-year rate is higher than 5-year rates. Okay, maybe I should put markers on it. Let me put markers. We'll make it a bit big. Why can't I pick it? Anyway, that's a 10-year rate, 387, and 5-year rate, 38. Okay. In normal times, this curve typically tends to be upward sloping, and there are kind of good reasons for it. Let's kind of build different things that adds to the value of yield. Investors are going to demand premiums for certain things. Okay. One of them is taxability premium. If you have two bonds, one is taxable, the other is not, everything else being the same, the untaxable bond or the taxable bonds should have a higher yield because you have to compensate for that. High taxes demand premium on yields. We have something called liquidity premium. Not all bonds have the same ease with which you can get rid of them. Treasury bonds are very liquid. On the other hand, bonds of a relatively mid-sized company are not. That means if in a pinch you have to sell them, it's going to take you a while, or you need to get a little bit of a haircut to be able to get rid of it. I can sell $100 million worth of treasuries, and depending upon how fast I can type, in 0.2 seconds. $100 million of bonds of Apple, it'll probably take me all day. Or if I want it right now, I'm going to have to do it, at a haircut, because bid offer spreads are much bigger for illiquid bonds. So less liquidity, higher yields. Again, everything else being the same. We have something called interest rate risk premium. We talked about it when we were calculating bond values. Everything else being the same, if you have two bonds have the same coupon rate, one of them is has 5 years maturity, the other has 10 years maturity. The 10-year one is riskier because if the yields go up by the same amount, uh, the 10-year bond is going to lose a lot more of its value compared to 5. Or you can have two bonds that have exactly the same maturity. One of them is 0 coupon, the other is a 10% coupon. On a percentage basis, 0 coupon bond is riskier because if you have 10% coupon, on average, you're getting your money back a little bit earlier. So high coupon, lower interest rate risk, longer maturity, higher interest rate risk. So investors may actually demand a premium for this. In fact, that's, among others, one of the main reasons why longer term bonds command a higher yield compared to shorter term bonds. Because the interest rate risk that you take on a 3-month T bill is not much to speak of. But on a 30-year, it is. Let me give you a rough idea. If interest rates went from 4.1 to 5.1 on a 30-year bond, you would lose 15% of the value of that bond. The same number for a 10-year bond is about 7%. If you're taking that much extra risk, you may be asking for a compensation. We also have inflation risk premium. When you believe that inflation could be high in the future, you demand higher returns. In fact, if you kind of did a layered version of the yield curve, I'm going to use different lines, different colors for lines. Let's start with the red. I'm going to call this the real rate. Okay. There is some upward sloping in real yield curves, real interest rates. Let me kind of show you. If we go to cnbc.com and look at US, in fact, let's just look for tip. No, it's not here. Can't find it. US 10-year tip. The real interest rate on that is 191, okay, rounding up. Now let's look at the 30-year. That's 209. Let's look at 5 years. That's 184. As you can see, the shorter is the maturity, the lower is even the real yield. Remember, these protect you against inflation. So inflation is a non-issue. And they're pretty much very liquid. So you're not going to worry about liquidity risk premium. And they're all taxable, so it doesn't matter. The only thing that is different between these bonds is their interest rate risk. If the real rates go up, the 30-year bond is going to lose a lot more money compared to a 5-year bond. So investors ask for a compensation for that. In this case, 5-year gets you 184 in real terms, 30-year gets you 208. So there's a slope even to the real one. Then to that, we're going to add a blue line. Come on. Maybe something like this. And the distance between these is inflation. or the so-called expected inflation. For example, let's go back. For the 5 years, the difference between nominal and regular, again, I normally calculate the exact implied inflation, but for our purposes, approximate is good enough. Nominal gets you 423, real gets you 184. The difference is 239. So the break-even inflation rate is 239. Or alternatively, you can think of it as the market is betting that average inflation over the next 5 years is going to be 239, all right? Which is above Fed's 2% rate. Now let's look at the same thing on 10 years. 423 minus 191.